What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful people? We have returned to League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for another epi, and what will probably be our final global power rankings until we're doing, the whole world's top 18, 16, 20, however many teams are going to be at Worlds 2021.
Yeah, this is the playoff round of the global power rankings. Cut it off, make sure everything's all good, lined up. And then we get to do that deep dive to really, investigate, analyze, and look in the teams that we know are going to be going to Worlds for a pre-Worlds type of global power rankings. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, guys. We still got to roll through these playoff rounds.
And of course it gets tricky because the reason you stop here is, teams start getting eliminated and then you don't even have 20 teams that you're really talking about. It becomes a bit of a mess overall. But we're going 20-1 today. There's some obviously familiar faces, but when you're playing these full best of fives, it's easier to climb up and down these rankings. But we start at the bottom half, and Misfits stand put at number 20. Feel like they did enough in that Rogue series, probably surprised with how competitive it was overall to stay and earn that spot in the top 20, and probably have them as slight favorites when they do match up against Fnatic.
I'll say it. They were 2,000 years from good old Rito away from being the victors in that series, my man. Absolutely. It's that step up from the Aphelioses of the world, what we can see with a Viego hopping in and out, new champ, swapping everything else in that pentakill in that amazing Game 5 Silver Scrapes final. Really think that Misfits stepped up the play to a higher degree on that day. As much as we talked about that series, wanting to see Rogue take that next step to be incredibly lethal as an elite team, don't think we saw exactly that, but absolutely part of that is due to the effort from the Misfit squad.
And you can throw Fnatic in right behind them on a list like this if you wanted to. Gen G returns. It's a slow return. They got the 2-0 against Nongshim. Game 1 was incredibly close. Came up with a bit of a stomp in Game 2. I have no idea how to feel about Gen G heading into playoffs, let alone as a 2 seed.
It's one of those weird things that, you look at this lineup, you look at some of these results, the history of these players. You should have a ton of confidence in Gen G, and especially what we have seen from the LCK, not exactly being incredibly stable or overly, potent, would have been primed for this Gen G roster. And they haven't exactly closed things out that you wanted to see from their previous highs during the earlier parts of the summer. The win against Nongshim, as you said, absolutely is that step in the right direction, and is one that lets you think about these best of 5 type of series that you're going to be getting into in playoffs, and have some more confidence in what Gen G will be able to provide, what star players like Ruler can step up and deliver.
It's just hard to look past that massive slump they had for really almost a month, where they just kept falling down the totem pole of playoff teams. Yeah, they got the big win against Nongshim to secure second, but I still don't have even close to full faith for them heading into the semifinals of playoffs. Then we get into the back-to-back-to-back. First time this season, I believe, that we've had 3 North American teams on the list. They're all bunched up together. I'm putting Team Liquid on the top of the 3 because this playoff run and how they closed out summer, they have looked clean.
What you have seen, I want to mention the other 2 for sure. Evil Geniuses and 100 Thieves, give them some credit. They've absolutely proven in the playoffs and everything prior this summer to hold these spots in the power rankings. But you're absolutely darn right that Team Liquid has to be the number 1 North American team that we're talking about. They leapfrog these summer successes in the LCS with what they have done in playoffs and the change in how aggressive, how lethal this lineup is. And we've said it before, but man, the duo, getting them back together in that lineup, Alfari and Santorin, what you paid the major money for this offseason, this is it. Usually, we saw little glimpses of it, the lead up, why we were excited about these type of moves for Team Liquid. This is it. In the playoffs, you're seeing the full payoff of what these 2 players can do combined. And then, of course, that's not even mentioning the other factors that Team Liquid can have to push them to victory. Tactical has been much better this summer than he was with some of those, questionable inting moments in spring, which has allowed Core JJ to roam around the map much more and find that.
That's exactly it. Core JJ just said, all right, I'm done bot lane. See you later. Good luck, pal. So he has to play safe because he's 1v2 all the time.
But he's handled the job just fine so far, and it's worked out. And then even, again, deserves some criticism for some of the performances. I mean, come on, you got to hit 1 or 2 shockwaves, right, Jensen? But still, at the end of the day, he has delivered some top-level performances in the mid lane and at least been able to keep his counterpart in check. When you have the other things going right for Team Liquid, you're not concerned about that.
Jensen, he's been around a long time. We've seen it time and time again. Coast through the regular season, turn it up for playoffs, and turn it up for international events. I don't see why this year would be any different. 100 Thieves and Team Liquid, obviously the ones going to Worlds. And EG, I'm putting slightly in the favorite, the driver's seat for that final World spot ahead of C9 and TSM.
Yeah, it's going to be obviously very interesting the way that the lower bracket shapes out for this situation and what Evil Geniuses will have to go through compared to, say, a TSM on their side with Immortals. But at the end of the day, it's going to be that match to get into that, the final 3 for North America. And yes, right now, the way things are going, the way things have been in summer, and even with that loss against 100 Thieves, I think I would mostly be leaning towards Evil Geniuses as my odds-on favorite.
But they are all pretty close. Pretty much the top 5 in North America, you could talk about being in a similar conversation. Ahead of NA, we get to G2, who slide down 4 spots, obviously, because of that head-to-head against Mad Lions, and they're the opposite. They climb a few spots to get right behind Rogue. So this is where you have that trio of LEC squads, and I think the gap is really bigger with these 3 EU squads to the 3 NA teams than the rankings are really doing it justice.
Yeah, and I think clearly the way to understand that is just looking at the performances of every individual member on these different teams, and you can nitpick much more, I find, that separates these 3 squads and where they are compared to the North American ones. When you're talking about G2 and what they did, yeah, they're you're in a relatively okay spot in these power rankings, but still the expectation is to be much higher up. And so when you really examine this and look at some of the performances and the setback this past weekend against the Mad Lions, man, for me, I'm looking at obviously Wonder in the top lane needs to get back to some level of play. And, this has been a relatively shaky year from him when you consider the past 2 before this. So that is something that needs to be major improvement on the Rift for G2 this upcoming week.
Yeah, he was absolutely exposed in that Armut matchup on multiple champions and matchups. Top eSports, the big drop. They're eliminated. We're not going to see them again. We're not talking about Top eSports again in 2021. The season's over, and it's insane that a team this talented is not going to Worlds. That's it.
And it is. And this is one of those moments where, look, if you didn't watch the LPL all year long because you said, hey, I'm going to get to Worlds, I'm going to see my boy Karsa, I'm going to see Knight, Jackie Love will be popping off. You missed it. They're not going to Worlds, man. That's what happens. That's what happens if you're not at the very top of your game in the LPL. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and that's exactly what happens to Top eSports. They fall in the playoffs, not enough for the regionals. What a league the LPL is when Top eSports is not enough.
And they obviously had a disappointing performance against LNG. LNG played great, had some impressive comebacks, but the Top eSports of its prime in 2020, when they had the gold leads that they had against LNG, that game is over within 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that really is, yes, some credit to LNG and how they performed and how they executed in game is really important. But absolutely, that when you're talking about a team, you're talking about players at this caliber, this level of expectation, to not close out on some of the advantages that you were able to gain, some of the proactive plays that you had early, not good from Top eSports, to say the least.
Ahead of them, you have Mad and Rogue getting even closer. We docked Rogue a little because you're going to see a lot of these teams climbed up ahead of them, and it was not even close to the dominant level of performance that we wanted to see against Misfits. For Mad Lions, it looks like it's spring all over again, where they kind of just meander through the regular season and then flip a switch when playoffs turn around.
We challenged Rogue, and unfortunately, yeah, they stepped up to the plate. They got like a 47-48% on the test, but you needed that 50 to pass for this one, to be that elite squad that we were looking for in that challenge. Same time, though, the Mad Lions stepped up and did deliver that elite level performance. And what they did, you're right to say that it looked just like spring when they were the champions, when they were so dominant in how they played. Everything coming up for them, the pathing from Elyoya, the bottom lane duo, and what pressure they're able to create. Humanoid he's humanoid. What do you want from him in the mid lane? He's fantastic. And yes, Armut being a major difference maker in the top lane. I know we've talked about how that is on, some underperformance for Wonder, but absolutely, you watch these games, you watch the execution and the communication required to get some of these plays off for Armut. Absolutely got to give him credit.
And the last one on this list, quickly, Liv Sandbox. Obviously, they lose in the last week because it was an absolute mess around the Rift. It's a damn one who took them down. But I still have some confidence in them. Now, these are less proven players when it comes to playoffs than a lot of the other squads in the LCK. So that's why, as you're going to see when we hit the top 10, squads like T1, Damn1 heading into playoffs, you just have more confidence in them because of the precedent.
Absolutely. And that doesn't mean that, of course, there isn't that surprise, that chance that Liv Sandbox can rise up.
I'm not shocked at all if they beat T1.
I hope not. But absolutely, you're right that it wouldn't necessarily be the shock. It absolutely is not going to be the shocker that it would have been, 5 months ago, 4 months ago type of situation, before this type of run was fully put together by Sandbox. Man, it is obviously, as you said, it's just tough for them to hold their position given the loss and that uncertainty that you still have towards a playoff type of scenario and pressure that comes with it, and knowing that, yes, their opponents are going to be far more experienced in these type of situations.
11's still pretty damn good for Liv Sandbox with how they started the summer split. Onto the top 10 now, my friends. And we kind of alluded to some of these other LCK squads where they would fit into the ranking. Hard to differentiate where they are because it's so close in that entire playoff bundle when you talk about the LCK. But first, breaking that up is LNG climbing up. We alluded to that series against Top Esports. They dropped 10. LNG goes up 4 spots. That was still the biggest upset we've had so far in the LPL playoffs.
And it's, what did you hear us praising, talking about with LNG when they were really emerging, really establishing themselves as this level of a team, and that you need to reevaluate your expectations for what they can do? It's been Tarzan and Icon. That's been the big key secrets. Those two players popping off, them finding ways to make plays in that mid lane and then extend that lead around the map. That's been the secret sauce for LNG. That's how they've been able to make it so far into the LPL playoffs. But as we all know, we've all seen that LPL bracket. Now's the time where it really, really is the test of your mettle.
Well, if you beat RNG, I'll tell you what, LNG, I might have a spot in the top 5 waiting for you, depending on how that series plays out. Then we have 2 more LCK squads. T1 moves down a couple because of that loss to Hanwha, and Damn1, obviously, the win against Liv Sandbox that we mentioned. And it might just be bias from splits past, but I'm hard-pressed to put T1 ahead of Damn1 as we head into these playoffs.
I think with, a clean end to the summer split, that would have been your invitation to keep them in that conversation, to have that. But you're right, as much as we have seen from T1, and sure, some of that baggage from prior splits applies and some of it is not fair to apply. But at the end of the day, when you look at it and you look at what Damn1 is and you evaluate how they're playing and what you can expect, yeah, for me, I agree that you have to throw Damn1 ahead of it. I think there are challenges as well for Damn1 that you can issue in these playoffs to see improvement, to see a higher level of play. But I think as far as power ranking goes, deserved ahead.
And even if Damn1 wins this split in the LCK, this is not even close to the Damn1 from 2020 where you're immediately going, they're the favorites to win Worlds. I don't really care how these playoffs end up.
It's almost going to be an impossible level of impressive play necessary to change that opinion around from what we have seen, the highs of highs with Damn1, and then to get this inconsistency of lows and sloppiness and changes around and underperformances, varying degrees around the roster, certainly does need to change. And when I'm looking into these playoffs and you want to identify some areas that you need to see not only domination and the actual statistic results, but just the eyeball test of, wow, this is different. This is another level of play from Damwon. You're, of course, looking at the bottom lane. That's a huge one with a lot of range for improvement from both players, from both ADC and support. But then specifically for me, as we praised so many times early in the split, Khan in the top side. I don't think Khan has nearly been as dominant as he had been earlier or can be for this Damwon team. And alongside, as we've talked many times, Coach Koma and how he has been has a special relationship and is able to really get through to Khan that other coaches or players haven't in the past. Need to see that in these playoffs.
Need to see a step up from really all 5 members to varying degrees for Damwon in this playoff run. A couple more squads climbing up. World Elite, big climb. They had 2 playoff series that they've already gone through, both 3-0s against OMG and BLG, who of course had that upset against RNG to close out the summer split. They have looked fantastic in the playoffs. We haven't really talked about them. They've just been that middle tier team in the regular season, but we're seeing them come alive in playoffs. Want to highlight Breathe especially because against BLG, listen to this champ pool. Irelia, Jax, Riven. What season is it?
Hey, man, I don't care what season it is. That's someone that says, I got the skill to win this lane and win this game for my team, and absolutely backed it up on the Rift. You're right. That was impressive stuff. I think another person you could talk about is obviously Elk and what he has continued to do for WE as things have turned around this summer split. Really have, been, again, I think it's one of the things that when we talk about LNG and the rare atoms of the LPL, it always feels somehow WE gets slighted and left behind or forgotten, and what they've done, the play of those 2 players and what they've done together as an organization in these playoffs, they deserve some recognition finally.
Yeah, and we're giving it to him, and you were going to see Mole potentially coming in the mid laner. He was supposed to be the starter for this, but it's been Shanks who's kind of turned it around since WE has looked so good the last couple of weeks. They legit threat against Rare Atom and to go into a deep playoff run. Last spot in 10-6 is Psg Talon, with some of these squads kind of faltering around them, and they played their first playoff series against J-Team. Maybe the games weren't as dominant as you expected to be, but they're 21-0 now on the summer split. Mark, what more do you want from them?
You put a test in front of PSG, they're checking it off, and every single one is coming back correct. Every single answer, every time, every week, every match, every game, every lane. It's always working out for PSG. And yes, they've been in and out of our top 20 in various degrees, and not because of their performance, just clearly based off of amount of games played and the scheduling situation. As we near the end of these playoffs around the regions in the world and get geared up for the world event, you have to remember PSG and the level of play that they bring and how they are not afraid of any major region squad or any major region star player is the better thing for me individually. This is absolutely the year for PSG at Worlds.
They just always have that MSI performance in their back pocket that you can talk about. Okay, the PCS is weaker than other regions. Doesn't matter. We've already seen them at MSI show up against the best teams in the world. Can't wait to see this squad at Worlds. Now we're into the top 5, and there's a little bit of movement because you remember last week we had the boys from TES hanging out there. I know I said I wouldn't talk about them, but I'll just reference them. So it's Nongshim and Rare Atom who both get the boost. Nongshim, obviously, you have that loss to Gen G, and you think, okay, I don't know. And then they drop game 1 against Afrika, Mark. Oh no, was it all a fluke for Nongshim? No, definitely not, because the next 3 games they looked really good against Afrika, and Damwon's going to have an interesting choice when they have to pick who they're playing in the next round, because I don't want to pick Nongshim.
I think the best thing to take away about Nongshim and when what you had this early morning with the Afrika Freaks series, as you said, the game 1, you're having that panic. You're starting to realize, and you see some of this inexperience, some of the mistakes that rookie or young players can make in playoff series, and you're going, yeah, but there's some veterans on this lineup. Peanut's got MVP. How could this go this way? That's not the way it was going to go, my man. The series turned rapidly around in the favor of Nongshim and how they were able to perform. Yes, it is the MVP Peanut. That was a major difference maker for them. But how can we not talk about first team all-star, Doc Dom, and what he is doing in the
Why
bottom
are you letting him
lane,
get a
the
Felios
damage.
2 games? Stop it.
Man, I don't know how you can see that first game and go, no, that was all up to other things. This is not about this, my man. He has clearly demonstrated to me, at the very least in the LCK, an unbelievable luck or chance to get the 2 perfect guns for Aphelios at every single team fight. At some point, I'm starting to question whether it's skill. The way that he's working through the guns to always make sure it's those ones, and with the right amount of ammunition for a team fight.
Just
the
spam
secret
Q.
sauce of Aphelios.
Spam Q when you don't have the ideal guns that you want at all times. Get that ammo out of there. Just empty the cases, man.
Yeah, and hey, it worked out for him in the way that they were able to play. Yes, this is an exciting performance and vindication, really, for Nongshim, that yes, they can make a stumble, they can make a mistake, but their mental is strong enough to wipe the slate clean and bounce back for the next game. And in playoff series, that is absolutely crucial for any squad, especially a team like this Nongshim squad that has just recently been proving themselves and does have that mix of veterans and young players on the roster.
And I think the reason they're the highest of the LCK squads is, yes, Damwon and T1, I think, have higher ceilings, absolutely. But what we've seen over the last month or so, they've had the least issues and concerns to look at when you're talking about Nongshim, even compared to those other squads. So that's why they're this high up. The next 4 are, of course, all LPL squads. And the tricky thing with them, Rare Atom gets the promotion because of TES, of course, but none of them played. None of them played this week, so of course they're not getting bumped out. They're just lying, lurking in the shadows, waiting to finally play a game and terrify people.
Yeah, but see, at the same time, part of me wants to say that it's vacation, it's Paradise Island for this Fantastic Four from the LPL. They're just waiting for their time to shine in playoffs. But knowing the LPL, knowing these teams and these players and how aggressive they are, man, I'm thinking of Goku and Vegeta in the weight training simulator room, my man. They're playing, they're getting ready. They don't care, man. They're always fighting, getting ready for these next playoff series. And yes, we start this one off with Rare Atom and what they can do. It has been quite a journey from, changing the name, laughing at Rare Atom and everything else, and then slowly putting together these wins and an impressive run throughout spring, a little bit of a stumble, and then what we have had from this crew in summer. Absolutely thrilled to get to see them in playoffs soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see iBoy playing at such a high level again. The turnaround for the entire squad has just been incredibly impressive. And obviously ahead of them, the triumvirate of FPX, RNG, and EDG. Finally, we're going to get to see some best of 5 action from the big 3 in the LPL this weekend.
And of course, you've got EDG just laying like a shark in the water, waiting in the lower section of what is happening in the LPL. But of course, you got RNG and then FPX in that top side. It never stops throwing down incredible challenges in the LPL.
And that's the thing. We're just waiting for games to fully rank these squads. But to be honest, the guys who are already through to winners, even if they're dropping a best of series, I don't think I'm dropping. I need 2 bad best ofs for me to really start demoting any of these guys out of the top 3. Because the LPL, with the LCK, LEC to somewhat a bit of a mix-up in the top half. The LPL is more terrifying than ever for Worlds this year. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you guys and gals on that flippity flip.